Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the game plan. My name is Gareth Soloway, and I'm here to give you the keys to your trading day. We'll cover some crypto, we'll cover stocks, we'll cover macro, and we're going to cover some commodities as well. So welcome. Thank you for tuning in, guys. Makes my heart swell when I see so many people viewing this on a daily basis. So let's get right into it. So the first thing I want to discuss is jobless claims. Jobless claims, let's go over some macro data. We saw a drop in jobless claims. That's people filing for unemployment. It dropped 9,000 to 230,000. What that tells us is the job market is still solid. There's not a ton of people getting laid off. Now, granted, it's August. Generally, people, if they get laid off in August, they may not file for unemployment until September because they go on vacation with their families. But bottom line, again, is that we're not seeing a massive jump in unemployment. Jobs generally are still available out there. Now, durable goods came in this morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. They came in down 5.2%. That's not a good number, but a lot of that has to do with Boeing. Boeing losing a lot of orders. And again, Boeing is such a mammoth player in the durable goods orders industry that, again, that decline accounts for a lot of the decline in durable goods. So overall, I would just kind of say durable goods, not a big indicator for the market. The jobs data today being jobless claims coming in pretty solid. Nothing great about it, nothing amazing about it, but nothing horrible as well. All right, now we're going to get into the good stuff. I wanted to cover that, get it out of the way so we could focus on charts. We're going to get right into Nvidia. Holy cow, what a move yesterday. Already $1 trillion stock coming up and ripping higher in the after hours, touching between $515 to $520 a share. Now, everyone out there is just saying, oh my goodness, Nvidia is the most amazing company in the world. I'm here to say that yes, it is amazing, but let's take it with a grain of salt. I'm going to actually show you, so you don't get caught in the momentum, some interesting factors. So let's jump over to this chart right here. All right, so this is your chart on Nvidia. This is the chart we looked at yesterday going into earnings. Remember, we talked about it, right? Where was your upside potential? It was up to this area. Your downside potential was down to this area. It's a beautiful channel, right? So again, we had our channel. We knew that our upside would be right here. Yesterday in the after hours, and let's go to it right now, guys. I want to show this to you, right? So if we go to your intraday chart, look at this. And let me just click on that. So this was your intraday or after hours high right up here. The price was approximately $515 to $520. Now, if we flip back to the daily chart, right, we go back to our channel. What is the high end of this channel? $520. All right, now interestingly enough, Nvidia since then has pulled back to about $503 right here. So we are seeing that upper band hold true even in spite of these amazing earnings that Nvidia has given us. All right, now again, does this mean it's a short? I mean, generally based on just looking at the charts and taking out emotion, yeah, it does. $520, $515 was a short. In fact, I had people commenting on Twitter yesterday saying that they took the short in the after hours at this level and they already made money and closed it out based on the pullback. So again, congrats to those people. Now, overall, do I think that this is sustainable? We're seeing a lot of stock upgrades, price target upgrades today by analysts. But remember, when you see analysts upgrading stocks, it's usually towards the end of a move, not necessarily the beginning. Remember, they are humans just like you and me. They get swelled with emotion. They see these numbers that, and again, listen, I don't want to take anything away from Nvidia. They were great numbers, but you have to look at the macro. You have to look at the big picture of what Nvidia is, what it's doing, and then again, just like Tesla in 2021, you're going to have other companies jumping at the heels to basically be competitors. So they're the only game in town right now. That will only last for 6 to 12 months. Within 6 to 12 months, competitors will be putting out chips that rival Nvidia's chips. Their margins were incredible, 50+% margins on their goods overall, right? The problem is, when more competition comes in, we're going to see that change. We saw that change with Tesla, right? So Tesla, they were having amazing margins, but now in the last year, those margins have collapsed. Again, this is because competitors, all the other competitors out there putting out EVs, trucks that are EV, all of this stuff, causing, again, the consumer to have more options. then you get a price war, and that brings it down. So again, their margins are not sustainable over the longer term. Short term, sure. But again, based on the charts, this is a short-term top now. And again, in general, I'm going to look for a fade on it instead of a continued move up. All right, so that again is just giving us a little bit of a sense of what we're seeing on the charts right now. Now, I want to jump over to this screen. Let's talk a little history. If you're like me, you love history. Heck, you'll find me watching the History Channel about different wars and different periods in history. I find that human nature, and this is for psychology reasons, usually human nature repeats. So something that people did in the BC period, right, or in Rome, in ancient Rome, the same sort of things happen today. This is why the tulip mania in the 1500s is so intriguing to me in terms of recent data or recent action in crypto or in other things. All right, what we're looking at here, check this out, guys. This is a chart, okay, this is a chart of Cisco Systems. Now, we've all heard of Cisco Systems, right? Cisco Systems, this is a chart from 1999 to 2000. So 1999 to 2000, Cisco Systems had this epic rally to the upside because the internet was unfolding. It was a new thing. It was going to change the world. And Cisco Systems, interestingly enough, ran from basically $12 to $15 right here to $80 in a straight line. And the reason this was the key was that everyone out there in the world was rushing to Cisco because they were the only game in town that was doing networking, that was building out the internet. All right, they were the only game in town back then. That was their only option. So essentially, you had a scenario here where this was the Nvidia of 2000, right? AI is going to change the world. I totally agree with that. But again, this was the internet back in 2000, and this was your only game in town. This is your chart of Nvidia. Now, interesting couple tidbits here. Number one, if you look at the $15 level here to this run, all right, that's about a 6 or so multiple, right? It goes up about 6x. Well, guess what? Here we're down at $100, and now we're north of 500. We're already at a 5x multiple, right? We've gone up 5 times. So again, just keep in mind that this is the same thing. Now, what ended up happening to Cisco? Let's take a look at this, because I think this is a great case study of just why you want to be a little cautious about buying in this upper range, and again, potentially even thinking about a short. Well, if we go to our one chart here, and I'm going to flip this over here to a bigger chart, here's your Cisco chart in 2000, right? And again, an epic run. There's nothing to be taken away from this run, but look at what happened afterwards. All right, so Cisco ended up collapsing back down, partly because the internet bubble burst, right? And there was an economic recession, but also because competitors started to put out the same sort of thing. The networking became, something that everyone rushed into. The reason companies go into these things is because the margins are so good. So Nvidia's margins are up here. Every other semiconductor right now, including ones in China, all over the world, are saying, oh my God, 50+% margins, we've all got to produce these chips. What's going to happen when they all do? There's going to be a glut. It's going to force price down. So believe it or not, it would not shock me to see that the level that Nvidia is at right now, it could end up being, if we look back in a year or two, the highest point on Nvidia, as good as it gets, because competitors will, and the market prices in and ahead of time. If it's 12 months out when these chips are going to come on the market will start pricing that competition in earlier. Okay, so let's just look at a bigger time frame, and this is kind of what I fear about with on this chart of Cisco. So if we look at the monthly chart on Cisco, look at this, okay? So this is just going till 2014. So here's 2000, here's the run, here's the collapse, and then look at what happened to Cisco. All right, it ultimately ended up trading in a range, never going back to those highs. Look at this. Look at that. So essentially, my point is that at some point competition comes in, and then unless Nvidia figures out some new technology to come up with, then you get competition that's going to keep these things in check. And what I want to show you even more so here, as we erase these lines, is that you're in a position where if we zoom out even more, right? If we zoom out and we even go to current price, and this is kind of the scary part about it, is that Cisco up here at the height of the internet craze, and again, I think we can all agree, this is probably the height of the AI craze, This is where it was. And look, even now, it's never gone back to those highs. And again, it doesn't mean that Nvidia can't go to 600 or 550 or all these things, but I do think it's important to recognize that, again, as competition comes in, things get a lot trickier for these companies. And again, look at Tesla. Tesla in 2021, only game in town for EVs, at least quality EVs. Now look at where their stock price is. Collapsed way off the craze of that EV craze, right? So again, just little things like that I want to point out to you I think are really, really important. All right. So let's get into some other charts here. I do want to show you something. So one of the things I teased is I was looking at a lot of the stocks in relation to financials. Like, what are the financials telling us? Because we have Jerome Powell tomorrow. And by the way, I will say this. It's very possible that Jerome Powell, because of Nvidia's strong earnings and the stock market being up, now that's assuming the stock market stays up today, which it is right now, but if the stock market stays really strong, we had a strong day yesterday, strong day today, could it mean that the Fed will be more hawkish tomorrow? And I would argue that it could. A lot of people might disagree. They're like, oh, well, what? The Fed doesn't pay attention to Nvidia earnings. It's what it does to the general market, to the consumer confidence, right? When you see these headlines about Nvidia being a $1 trillion+ company, it makes people more bullish. It makes people willing to spend money. They're looking at their 401k. Oh my goodness, I'm up another 5% in my 401k. You know what? I really wanted to go buy that new car. I'm going to go do it now. It's the effect that the stock market has and pushes through the system. So these are the things that I want to pay attention to. So just be aware, for me, it means to me, we might see a more hawkish Jerome Powell tomorrow when he gives his speech at 10:05 a.m. Be aware of that. Okay, before we do that, just speaking of that, I want to look at the 10-year real quick, the 10-year yield. Now, the 10-year yield pulled off double top yesterday here, but one of the things to keep in mind, we are starting to see a bounce today. Now, why are we seeing a bounce in yields? Could it be the Nvidia earnings are starting to make people think, just like me, the Fed might be more hawkish? Now, you had a nice pullback yesterday, but you're starting to uptick again. And again, still double top is still intact, right? So double top's still intact. Now, let's go back to these financials. All right, so if we look at the financials, and I'm just going to go to Morgan Stanley, right? So let's take a look at the Morgan Stanley chart. What we're seeing here in the short term is a potential wedge pattern that's bearish building, right? So this is your weekly chart of Morgan Stanley. And what I want to show you here is this is the concerning thing here. Look at this trend line, okay? So you see this trend line right here, pivot to pivot to pivot to pivot, and look at us coming down into it. Now, we probably get a small bounce, but if this breaks, this to me is what I would refer to, okay? This is to me a bearish pattern, okay? It's basically a sharp down move with lots of sideways consolidation that's bearish. This, if you look at probabilities, this pattern about 70 to 80% of the time breaks down, okay? Not only that, I just want to point this out. Let me erase this so we can see this, just for educational purposes, because I love throwing education at you. This candle right here, that's a topping tail. Learn your topping tails, guys. Especially, this is a weekly candle. Weekly are more important than daily. You get a topping tail, high of chart, perfect candle formation. Look at how that signaled the down move. Amazing. Topping tails, learn them, guys. I teach them in the Winning Trader series. It's an incredible, incredible journey to go through that Winning Trader series. All right. Now, let's just say, okay, so that's Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley, no big deal, right? All right, it's one financial. But let's look at Citigroup. All right. Now, this is more problematic to me. Citigroup has already broken down. Look at this right there. There's your wedge pattern off the down move. And by the way, Citigroup, going back to 2021, $80 stock, it's down 50%. Now, the reason I'm bringing this to your attention isn't just because these charts are interesting. It's because what does it tell us about the underlying financial system? Is there trouble brewing? Now, we knew there was trouble brewing earlier this year with the regional banks, right? Silicon Valley Bank, et cetera. Some of them failed. But the question is, could Citibank have trouble brewing? Could Morgan Stanley have trouble brewing? What about other names? Like, let's take a look at a couple other names here. Let's go to Wells Fargo. Let's see what Wells Fargo's doing. And if I look at Wells Fargo, I'm seeing generally the same sort of thing going on here, where you have this overall, there's this bearish pattern of development, right? This is, again, that's generally what ends up happening when you have this formation. So to me, this spells trouble. Whether it spells the Fed will continue to hike, I'm not sure, but it tells me that interest rates remaining where they are, which now remember in yesterday's game plan, I showed you that we're not going to see, based on Fed funds futures, we're not going to see cuts until mid-2024. It's a long time from now. It's almost a year. So interest rates are going to remain up here at the most restrictive levels we've seen basically, at least with mortgages, since 2000. How is that going to affect the financial system? Is it going to put more stress? And lastly, I'll say on this topic is that remember, people have been conditioned to low interest rates. While historically a 5%, 5.25% Fed funds rate is not crazy, when you put people in a situation where for 20 years they basically had low rates, or at least 15 years, this is very restrictive, and our financial system is not made to be supportive of it. And what I mean by that, lastly, is that the debt that the system has now, $1 trillion in credit card debt, crazy amounts of mortgage debt, crazy amounts of debt to GDP and debt for the U.S., it is not able to support interest rates this high for a long period of time. Things will break. We've already seen it a little bit. They will break more. All right. So that's where I wanted to stop right there on that functional, that chart right there. I do want to go over a couple other things. We're going to jump over here. I want to quickly look at a couple charts going into today. One of them is Microsoft, guys. Take a look at the Microsoft daily chart. Okay, now Microsoft has had a top put in, kind of a mountaintop, right? We had a high, higher high, higher high, and then here's your low, slightly higher low, flat low, and then lower low. So we're starting to come down. So the question that I would have to you is, well, where do you look to short Microsoft? All right, again, where's your next entry point or on the short side? And I would dare say there's a beautiful trend line right in here that we're approaching very quickly. So here we have a very clear scenario, right, where we had this pivot low, this one, and this one, and then we broke. Now we're retracing to the scene of the crime. You're looking at around, let's call it 335 as a potential shortable level. My guess is that's where you start to pull back again. So you'll get a lot of bulls on board thinking it's going to break out. They're not going to see this trend line necessarily. My guess is you come back off of that level. Again, right around 335 to 336. Okay, couple other charts I want to quickly go over here as we continue through. I do want to go over the Bitcoin chart. So let's take a quick look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin here, guys, on the chart is basically just hovering. We did get a little bit of a bounce yesterday, so I thought that was kind of interesting. Here you could see, again, we fell over, and then we got a little bounce yesterday. One of the things I noticed, and this is kind of fascinating, just a little facts, I love throwing these little facts at you guys, is that when Nvidia earnings came out, Bitcoin was trading at the high level of this candle. As soon as Nvidia earnings came out and Nvidia started to go up, we saw Bitcoin selling in the after hours, or it wasn't after hours for Bitcoin. The thought process here is interesting. What it tells me is that you have investors that are in Bitcoin that are also chasing Nvidia. So when Bitcoin's hot, they pull money from Nvidia, they go into Bitcoin, and then they go back. And it's basically what it's known as a momentum trade. There's momentum investors chasing these things. And that's kind of weird because overall, I'll tell you honestly, I blew up my account multiple times early in my career doing just that, trying to chase moves. And usually by the time I would get in, it was the end of the move. So again, we'll have to see if that's the case for Nvidia. But just be aware of that, is that you don't want to be a chaser. In investing, you need to be a leader. And I don't mean you literally have to lead people, but you have to be one of the first in on the trade. When the trade is the scariest, that is your time to step up and get in. I know it's hard to do. Trust me. I did a lot of training in my part to get me to that point, but that's when you want to step in. And you want to exit when everyone else is euphoric, right? When everyone else is saying this is the greatest, when you're seeing price targets getting raised, new all-time highs, oh my God, it's going to go up here, here, here. You have to say to yourself, let me look at this euphoria. Let me be a level-headed, logical trader or investor, and let me exit. And that's really the key. And momentum chasing is not a good thing. In terms of Bitcoin, there's really nothing new here. You could head back to test this level here. That would be a classic retrace, so that is always a possibility. But overall, I still have it priced in. We're going to 25,000, right? And then eventually, I still think we're going lower. The resulting lower move below 25 is probably when the overall stock market starts to collapse lower. All right, so that was one chart I wanted to go over. I also wanted to quickly touch on Let's see here. Earnings-wise this morning, Snowflake came out. I don't really see a trade there. Splunk, not really looking to short that. It's not a big enough company, so I'm not going to go into those very much. But I do want to go over the gold chart real quick here, guys. Gold is pausing today. Let me refresh my chart there. So we see gold again. We know it bounced off this level right down here. It was a beautiful bounce. And again, right there, and it started to move up. I think gold kind of pauses here and then starts to take off again. You could have a few days of pause in this action. Oh, one chart I do want to go over. Let's go over the natural gas chart. I think that's one that people really want to go over as well. Natural gas, it is getting low and getting very, very interesting. Down trading here at the 254 level right now. If we zoom out on the chart, we can see again that it's had quite the collapse, right? I mean, you had this is the Russia invasion stuff going on up here, the threat to cut off all the gas to Europe, and then look at the collapse. Now, to me, the first thing I'm seeing is that you have an underbelly trend line here, and I know it's a little hard to see. I'll zoom in a little bit, but basically right here. And this is why I'm interested in natural gas now, right? Because you're getting to this point where you're starting to see the charts pay attention to a trend line right through here. So you're getting very, very close, 250, 245, right down in this range. Looks really interesting, and you're starting to get a little sell-off. My guess is you start to have another pump to the upside on the natural gas chart. All right, guys. So again, coming back here to the center camera here is, important for us to recognize what's going on in these charts. I'd love to go over more charts out there. I have a Qs chart I wanted to go over, S&P, but we can do that tomorrow morning. I'll have a chance before the FOMC Jerome Powell speech that's going to be at 10:05, since this will be at 9 o'clock in the morning. But again, guys, I'm running out of time. I got to get to my trading class or my trading group. I do want to say, come follow me on Twitter. Come follow me on YouTube. You guys are awesome. I love the amount of attention you guys are doing, and I love the comments you guys are giving. It means the world to me to see the kindness you guys exude for the effort that I put in. It really does make a difference. So you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you for tuning into the game plan, and I will talk to you tomorrow.